Dusk in the Sunset Country. A story from the book Dark Weird Stuff by Mark Hodgetts. Mel Robinson was a local artist who produced a series of paintings that touched my soul. They were almost surreal representations of Western Victorian landscapes. One of those paintings sat on the wall above my desk, and it teased my imagination about the magical potential that sunset offered. Mel's painting captured the essence of twilight, depicting shapes losing definition and melting into the ever-deepening gloom. I wanted to write a story that captured that, but couldn't find a handle until a somewhat bizarre story about an exorcism gone wrong in a tiny place called Antwerp made the national news. That sparked a lot of thought about what went on in places out the back of beyond. Mel's painting eventually provided the backdrop for the events that my mind contrived. The day after they had buried Wilma was a scorcher, and Graeme saw no need to do anything but sit in the shade of the porch with a well-stocked esky full of Carlton United's finest. Louise was busy inside somewhere informing those that had to be told, whoever they were, of her sister's demise, and she made it quite plain that Graeme's assistance was not required. She was funny like that, Louise. Her beliefs were a bloody mystery. A Gordian knot best left alone, in Graeme's opinion. Christ, her sister had barely stopped breathing before she had been dumped into the earth, wrapped in an old quilt. It had been bloody unnerving. No prayers had been said. The hole had been filled in without ceremony, and Louise was back inside before you could say rest in peace. Should have made more of an effort to understand her, but their relationship had been lurching from one screaming match to another, and it felt wrong to go all gooey just because a stupid fat cow of a sister had snuffed it. He reached inside the esky and found another can. Maybe it was time that he moved on himself. So the money had been good, and would be even better now that there were just the two of them. But things were going sour. Louise was going to the dogs. Her looks had gone to hell, and she put on a bucket load of lard. He could put up with that. He was no oil painting himself, but now there was an acidic sourness about her that was starting to scare him. The burial had at least made that clear. He took a deep swallow and considered yesterday's events. No priest, no mortician, no doctor, just a hole in the ground and a blanket. He hoped that he got a better send-off than that. Everyone was entitled to their beliefs, and God knew that some had some weird ones. He remembered that it was only 100 kilometres or so south of where he sat that some lunatics had attempted to perform an exorcism on an old woman who had had a heart attack. He could not remember all the details, except for one fellow running around the house with glad wrap to form a protective shield against Satan. Sheer bloody lunacy, he thought. Lunacy that Louise might at least be on nodding terms with. He stared across the front yard, out into the little desert. Dusk was not far away. It was the best time of day out in the Sunset Country. The land lost its harshness as sharp lines lost their edge, blurred, and melted away. The predominant colour was mauve, gradually fading to black. It was worth watching. In the early days, Louise and he had watched it every night. Louise had given it away years back, but he kept a vigil most nights. It was better than the banality of TV, and the only radio station was the bloody ABC. He took another gulp from his can and burped luxuriously. The shadows lengthened before him as the colours grew deeper and blurred into one another. Louise remained inside. That suited Graeme just fine. He squinted in the dying light, trying to pick out the details of the familiar landscape that lay before him. As usual, he could not quite nail it. Shapes seemed to shift and bend. For instance, Lockie's tree, a landmark that stood boldly in the sun, seemed to shrink to the level of the surrounding scrub and become another indistinct smudge. He could point to it where it was supposed to stand, but for the life of him could not distinguish it from several other dull clumps that ran along his sightline. Somehow a sense of perspective got lost. He let his eyes do a full, slow take of the entire view and then double-checked. A dark figure seemed to be moving out there. It had been no more than an indistinct dot minutes ago, but had grown to a dark smudge that seemed to shift and change in appearance. He watched it closely for a full minute and then dismissed it as another trick of the light. He drained his can and sent his fingers in search of another. A flock of white cockatoos flew overhead, screaming and chattering in their harsh alien language. He watched them swirl, collectively hesitate, and then fly on in search of a place to settle for the night. Usually they roosted in the copse of trees in the home paddock, but not this evening. His eyes went searching for the figure that had caught his attention before, and he was surprised to see that it had grown again. Now it had divided into 3 distinct shapes, strung out behind each other, looking like a lost fence line. He watched them closely. The first figure bobbed and weaved in the gloom, seemingly heading towards the house. He watched it closely, wanting it to either stop or change course, but the shape and its companions did neither. A dark premonition seeped into Graeme's brain and sent him searching for his binoculars. They were where he had left them on the television in the lounge room. He snatched them up and stopped to listen. Louise was chanting something in a room, for God's sake. He listened to her for a minute, shook his head tiredly, and hoped that he didn't drone on and on all night. He went back outside and spotted the shapes. There were now 5 distinct blobs. He raised the binoculars and focused on the closest. It was a man. He had known it was going to be, but reason had prevented him from believing it. There was nothing out there for miles, just a dry, barren shithole of a place that would drink you up as soon as you set foot in it. But the man was there, and he was coming towards the house. It did not make a whole lot of sense. Maybe there had been an accident of some sort. An ecological tour, or whatever they called them, had run into trouble and the survivors were walking out in search of help. Graeme sighed. He did not like visitors at the best of times, and a busload of hot, thirsty greenies was not his idea of cracking company. "We've got visitors," he called over his shoulder. Louise did not answer. Graeme's going to have a pretty bad evening. He's going to discover things that he wishes that he never knew about. The story, Dusk in the Sunset Country, is part of the book of stories, Dark Weird Stuff, which is a book of dark speculative fiction spanning the fields of horror, sci-fi and dark fantasy. It's currently available to buy in paperback format through Amazon and Lulu Books. The ebook is currently available at Lulu and will shortly be on Amazon as well. Subscribe to this channel for more reading from the anthology and future books. Thank you.